So today I'm sitting here with Christee Curran-Bauer. She is an author and an illustrator of several books that are actually behind me right now. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Happy to do it. You know, we've got a couple different books back here, which I know that we're going to want to dive into, but how'd you get started illustrating?
It's something that I always wanted to do. So I've been working towards that goal since I was a kid. Once I got to college, I originally went to Rutgers University. They have a fine arts school there called Mason Gross. But I realized once I got there that I really wanted a concentration in illustration. So I actually transferred to Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, and I went there for the remainder of my college undergrad years. So I got my degree in communications design with a concentration in illustration. And I really began from there to go deeper into the world of children's books using organizations like STPWI, the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. I learned a lot from them. Finally got an agent after working hard and working on my portfolio for many years. Got an agent in 2017. The first book that I had to illustrate was called Ben's West Texas Snow.
Oh, cool.
And that was a local publisher in Texas, basically about a boy who grows up on a cotton farm and he's never seen snow. His grandfather tells him it's going to snow at the cotton harvest. It looks like snow. And then I did Sugar and Spice and Everyting Mice. I illustrated this. This is by Annie Silvestro. She has many books out. In working with the publisher, they pitched this to them, which I was working on at the time, The Case of the Missing Tarts. They liked it enough to ask me to turn it into, it was a picture book. I turned it into a chapter book, an early reader, and it's kind of a fusion of picture book and early chapter book and comic form, a lot of speech bubbles. And then this one, it was a 2-book deal, and this is The Case of the Poached Painting.
So you go through all this trouble, basically, all these challenges in getting an agent, getting published. What's the motivation for all that?
I can't see myself doing anything else because I love to tell stories so much and I love to draw. And it's almost like I wanted to hone the drawing skills that I had from the beginning in order to tell stories, because I always wound up trying to tell a story with what I was doing, which is actually why I wound up transferring out of the fine art school that I was in, moved on into illustration, because I think I always knew that I wanted to do that. I loved being in a library as a kid, and I loved to read, and I love the picture book format. And even the early chapter book format, there's just something really magical about it, and I want to be part of that for children. I'm not going to get award for The Case of the Missing Tarts, but it's kids that maybe not necessarily want to read the more traditional books. You can get them in with this. I know my brother loved Captain Underpants as a kid. We couldn't get him to read other things.
I used to read that too.
Yes, yeah. I feel like I'm making these books for kids that maybe aren't as voracious of readers and they just want something fun.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's more fun for me to do that anyway. But it's fun for me to do books like this too. I like to mix it up. The cover for book one actually took the longest to figure out because we were trying to figure out what all of their coloring would be, including their hats and everything.
Sure.
They started off as a lot more neutral, and we added pops of color later. These were more trials, mostly error, but we were getting closer at this point to what the cover would look like.
Okay.
But even after this, which was the final for the cover, I think when I scanned it in and edited it, I even added more brightness so it would pop on the shelf more. We wanted to make it film noir but kid friendly.
Okay.
So
aside from just the technical end of either writing or illustrating, what's your overall philosophy behind illustrating and doing books for children?
I'm trying to really just impart a sense of fun and wonder and to create a world for them to want to maybe be motivated to write and draw their own stories. Really just that they can have fun reading. It's supposed to be a fun thing and an escape. I hope to entertain them and to engage them and help them improve their reading, because at this age, what I would say ages 4 to 8, this is pitched for, they're just starting to get into reading for themselves independently. So this is something that they can either read with a parent or they can read themselves, and to just have a little escape from everything going on, maybe at school or at home.
So you got a few books published right now. What's kind of the end goal? Like, what's your vision? What's the dream for the next couple of years?
To keep doing it, really, and to be able to do more than I'm doing right now. When my kids are little, I realize that may or may not be a very realistic goal, but I hope to keep going at the momentum I'm going and maybe a little bit more. I would like to just keep making books until I don't even really want to retire. I just want to keep making books and illustrating. And whether it's in picture book industry or it's some other avenue like licensing or coloring books or whatever it is, I just want to illustrate and make art.
No. I think that super aligns with the overall, like, what you're doing with the books. The books, the content itself is, hey, reading for reading's sake, learning how to do that. And your work, too, it's like the work is the goal. You're doing it for the sake that the art itself is good to do.
Yeah, and I hope really to cultivate in young children that read the books, to help to cultivate love for reading and planting that seed, and maybe a love for making art as well. I know I used to read books like this when I was a kid, and I would make my own comics from it, and it's to spark imagination and to maybe even spark a story in them, to want to write a mystery or something like that. Writing a mystery is not easy, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't used to it, and there can be a lot of moving parts that you have to streamline into a more succinct, children's length type of book. I hope it inspires them. These are actually the proofs for book 2. And if I had any correction or notes, they would make those. It's just so that I can compare it to the original and know that they printed accurately. Like, this is one. So I was working on my pitch for book 3, which I am doing my utmost to have the Jersey Shore. I am from New Jersey. This is some of the art samples that we sent along with a manuscript. This is the paper that I use this is original. I was just setting up a couple of sample pages that weren't in color yet. This is in the sweet shop, like the candy shop on the boardwalk, and this is when they get to the beach at first. One of them's got the metal detector. The other one's, got the crime magazine that he's reading. And it's supposed to be their vacation, but obviously they run into solving a mystery.
And then once it gets to the colored version, is that you coloring it in, or is that somebody else coloring it in?
That's me coloring it in.
Okay.
For graphic novels, traditionally, there is someone who draws and then someone who is a colorist. That's usually when everything's happening digitally, and I don't work digitally. I just clean it up digitally. Which is kind of rare for that genre, but it's not a true graphic novel genre. It's like a fusion.
Well, I think it's kind of neat because it gives it its own very unique feel to it, and I think that's kind of nice on your part to be able to have some sort of like a stamp to say, hey, this is what my style looks like. It's going to be a little bit different from what you see in the mainstream.
I enjoy the hand-drawn element, and I don't like spending too much time in front of a screen anyways, which I do a lot of towards the end when I clean everything up and edit it. This is the original sketch for the cover, and these are some color studies of it, trying different things. This is the final of the cover. This is the first print, the advanced reader copy stage, and then this is the proof of the cover, where we make sure all the colors track right. And then finally, this is the finished book.
Awesome. Do you get inspiration for your books from your kids, or do you get inspiration from other sources?
So I think it was a lot of the shows that I consumed as a kid, a lot of the cartoons, that like one Saturday morning era that they had.
Oh, yeah.
And even the more quirky mysteries that I watched as an adult. I don't know if anyone is familiar with the USA show Psych. It was around in like the mid-2000s.
Oh, yeah.
This is like, I don't know, Paw Patrol meets Psych. So yeah, I hope that they have fun reading it, because I have fun writing it and putting it together and promoting it, which is the next leg of this journey.
So I think a lot of times people, they think of a children's book and they kind of think, I already know what's going to be in there. But what's one of the things that people wouldn't expect when they think of one of your books?
Well, there's actually a little bit of procedural Easter eggs in there of how to solve a mystery. I know that one of the steps solving mystery is forming a hypothesis, to canvassing the area where the crime happened, and even I think I go into in the second book what deductive reasoning is.
Oh, there you go.
So there's some procedural knowledge that gets sprinkled in there with the jokes and the character quirks and the shenanigans. And hopefully what they don't expect is who did it at the end and how they get caught. So yeah. There is a little who the culprit is. There's a little animal facts file at the end of each book, and it kind of tells you more about why I chose that animal to be the culprit. I think there's a little glossary at the end for the words.
Well, that sounds like a lot of fun. I know my daughter, for instance, would love that. I was like, oh, I'm a detective, just like so-and-so. And if you give them just a couple tools to start solving mysteries around the house, all mysteries are going to wind up being solved.
Yes.
Folks are going to be, I'm sure, really interested in learning more about the books, learning more about yourself. Where can they learn more about those?
You can go to ChristeeCurran-Bauer.com, and you can find me on Instagram too, Christee Curran-Bauer for the double E. So I pop right up on there. You can find me on Twitter, but I'm most active on Instagram. I have a Facebook page, an author, illustrator page. You can find me on there too under the same name.
Well, thanks again for just showing us the books and showing us what you do and the space, and also just diving into why you do what you do and sharing more about Yeah, the inner life of Christee.
Thank you so much for having me.